The sun had barely risen when the sound of brooms and running water echoed through the large house. The maid had already been at work for hours, dusting shelves, polishing the wooden floors, and setting the breakfast table. Her daughter sat quietly near the door, her small hands folded in her lap, waiting for her mother to finish. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she had nowhere else to go. Her mother couldn't afford someone to watch her at home, and she couldn't leave her alone either. So she came along, every single day, and sat in the corner like a little shadow. The house was huge, with tall windows and golden curtains that moved with the morning breeze. Music filled the rooms every day because the family's children were taking piano lessons. The tutor came in the afternoon, and the sound of the piano echoed through the halls like something magical. The little girl always listened carefully, her eyes wide, her heart quietly following the rhythm. She didn't know the name of the songs, but she felt something every time the keys were pressed. It was like the music was talking to her, telling her a story she somehow understood. The children of the house were about her age, but they never spoke kindly to her. They called her the maid's daughter in a tone that felt sharp. Sometimes they laughed when they saw her waiting quietly near the piano room. One of them once said, "You think you can play this thing? You don't even belong near it." The girl didn't reply. She just looked at the shining keys from a distance, her curiosity stronger than her fear. Her mother always warned her to stay away from the piano. "It's not ours," she would say softly. "Don't touch what doesn't belong to us. We just clean here, we don't play." The girl nodded each time, but her heart didn't agree. Every time she saw the piano, she felt drawn to it, like it was calling her name without words. One afternoon, the house was quiet. The family had gone out, and the tutor wouldn't come that day. Her mother was in another room, cleaning the silverware. The little girl wandered into the music room, her small steps barely making a sound. The piano stood near the window, glowing softly under the sunlight. She reached out and touched the edge of it gently, afraid it might break under her fingers. Then she sat on the bench, her legs too short to reach the floor. Her hands hovered above the keys. She pressed one, and a soft sound came out, bright and full. She smiled. Then she pressed another. Slowly, she began to move her fingers around, not knowing what she was doing. But the sounds came together in a way that felt right. It was clumsy, but there was something real in it, a small spark of rhythm and emotion that even she didn't understand. She didn't know how long she played, but when she looked up, she saw her mother standing at the door, frozen. The maid's hands were still wet from washing dishes, and her eyes were wide with shock. The little girl looked up and said softly, "Can I play it for you, Mom?" Her mother wanted to say no to stop her, but she couldn't. The words stuck in her throat. She had never seen her daughter so happy, so alive. For a moment, she forgot they were in someone else's house. But then, before she could answer, the sound of footsteps came. The family's children had returned earlier than expected. They peeked into the room, and when they saw the maid's daughter sitting at the piano, they burst out laughing. "Look at her. The maid's kid thinks she's a musician," one of them shouted. The girl froze. Her fingers stopped moving and her heart sank. She looked at her mother, who quickly rushed over and pulled her off the bench. "I'm sorry, sir," the maid said, her voice shaking. "She didn't mean any harm. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." The children giggled as they walked away, whispering to each other. The little girl kept her eyes on the floor, fighting back tears. Her mother held her hand tightly. When they got home that evening, the girl stayed quiet. She didn't eat much, and before going to bed, she whispered, "I just wanted to play it for you." Her mother stroked her hair and said, "I know, my dear, but the world doesn't always let us do what we love." The next few days went on as usual. The maid worked harder than ever, afraid her daughter's small mistake might cost her the job. The girl stayed quiet during the piano lessons, sitting farther away than before. But inside, the music didn't leave her. She still heard the notes in her head, the same way the tutor played them. She remembered the patterns, the sounds, the rhythm. Every beat stayed in her mind like a secret melody she carried with her. One evening, while her mother was cleaning the upper floor, the little girl sneaked into the old storeroom. There, in the corner, stood another piano, an old dusty one that hadn't been used in years. The keys were yellowed and a few didn't work, but it was still a piano. Her heart raced as she sat down and pressed a key. It worked. The sound was a little dull, but it was enough. She smiled and started playing slowly, trying to repeat what she'd heard earlier that week. The notes came out rough at first, but as she kept going, they started to make sense. Her hands remembered what her ears had learned. Night after night, she returned to that storeroom. She practiced quietly so no one would hear. Sometimes she played for just a few minutes before her mother came looking for her. Other times she stayed until her small hands began to hurt. The piano became her secret friend, the only place where she didn't feel like the maid's daughter. One afternoon, when the family was out again, she played longer than usual. She lost track of time. The music filled the air softly, echoing through the empty halls. What she didn't know was that one of the family's sons had come home early. He followed the sound and peeked inside the storeroom. There she was, sitting on the old bench, her eyes closed, her fingers moving like she was born to do it. He watched for a while, not saying a word. When she finished, he clapped sarcastically. "So that's what you do when no one's watching," he said. The girl jumped, startled. "I just wanted to play it for my mom," she replied quietly. He laughed and shook his head. "Maid's kids don't play Chopin," he said mockingly. She didn't answer. She just looked down at her hands, embarrassed. Then he took out his phone and recorded a few seconds of her playing before walking away. That night she told her mother what happened. Her mother's face went pale. "You must never touch it again," she said firmly. "If they tell their parents, we'll lose everything." The girl nodded, but her heart felt heavy. She didn't understand why playing something beautiful could be wrong. The next morning, whispers spread around the house. The children were giggling again, but this time they had something new. The boy had shown the recording to his friends, telling them to guess who was playing. When they learned it was the maid's daughter, they couldn't stop laughing. Some of the adults heard the story too, thinking it was just a funny tale. A little girl pretending to be a musician. The maid felt her stomach twist when she heard the laughter from the kitchen. She wanted to hide, but she couldn't. She had to keep working, pretending not to hear. But deep inside, she was torn between shame and pride. Shame because people were mocking them. Pride because she knew somehow that her daughter's gift was real. That night, the girl sat quietly near the window of their small room. The stars were out, shining above the city lights. She could still hear the laughter echoing in her mind, but she also remembered the sound of the keys beneath her fingers. Her mother sat beside her and asked softly, "You really love that piano, don't you?" The girl nodded. "When I play," she whispered, "it feels like I'm somewhere else, like the world becomes kind for a little while." Her mother didn't know what to say. She just pulled her daughter close and kissed her forehead. "One day," she said, "maybe someone will hear you. Really hear you." The girl didn't answer. She just looked out the window, her small eyes full of quiet hope. The night breeze moved through the room, carrying the faint sound of music from far away. A sound she would never forget. She didn't know it yet, but that sound would one day change everything. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. The maid worked with her head down, careful not to draw any attention. The laughter of the children still echoed faintly through the big house, and even though no one mentioned the piano anymore, both she and her daughter could feel that something had changed. The girl stopped going near the music room, but that didn't mean the music left her. It was always there, running through her mind like a soft whisper she couldn't turn off. Every time she heard the tutor playing with the children, she would pause in her mother's cleaning room and listen. She remembered every sound, every pause, every pattern. She could hum entire songs by ear now, though she didn't even know what the pieces were called. She didn't understand how she remembered it all. She just did. When she closed her eyes, she could almost see her fingers pressing the keys in her imagination, creating melodies no one else could hear. One evening, after a long day, her mother found her sitting on the floor, tapping her fingers on a piece of cardboard. "What are you doing, my child?" her mother asked gently. The girl looked up with a shy smile. "Practicing," she said. Her mother sighed and sat beside her. "You'll only get hurt if you keep dreaming about something that isn't meant for us." But the girl shook her head softly. "It's not just a dream, Mama. It feels like something I'm supposed to do." Her mother didn't argue, but in her heart she was afraid. Afraid that her daughter's gift, and as beautiful as it was, could only bring her pain in a world where people didn't treat them as equals. Still, she couldn't stop her daughter from playing in secret. Every few days, the little girl would sneak into the storeroom again, brushing off the dust from the old piano. She played quietly, always listening for footsteps, Even if she could only play for 5 minutes before being discovered, those 5 minutes meant the world to her. One afternoon while she was playing, the boy who had laughed at her the week before returned. This time he didn't say anything. He just leaned against the door frame and watched. The way she moved her fingers made him curious. He thought maybe it had been luck the first time, but now he realized it wasn't luck at all. She was really good. Without saying a word, he pulled out his phone again, recording her playing once more, this time not to mock her, but because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The next day he showed the video to his piano tutor. "Listen to this," he said, handing the phone over casually. The tutor frowned, thinking it was just another prank. But when the music began to play, his expression changed. He recognized the melody immediately. It was one of Chopin's nocturnes, a piece that took his students months to learn. Yet here it was, played almost perfectly by a little girl who had never taken a lesson. "Who is this?" the tutor asked, his voice serious. "The maid's daughter," the boy said with a shrug. The tutor stared at him. "Do not lie to me." "I'm not," the boy replied. "She plays it on that old piano in the storeroom." That same afternoon, the tutor requested to see her play in person. The mistress of the house found it amusing. "You mean the maid's child? Surely you're joking." But the tutor was firm. "Talent doesn't belong to only one kind of person. If what I heard is real, this child must be encouraged." The mistress laughed lightly and said, "Fine then, let her play. It might be entertaining." The maid was terrified when she heard about it. She begged her daughter to refuse. "Please," she said, holding her small hands. "Don't do it. They'll just laugh at you again." But the girl shook her head gently. "If I don't play, they'll think I was pretending. I don't want to hide, Mama. I just want to play for real." The next morning, everyone gathered in the music room. The tutor, the mistress, her husband, the children, and even a few of their guests. The maid stood at the door, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. Her daughter walked in slowly, her small frame almost swallowed by the grand room. The piano looked even larger than she remembered. She sat on the bench, her feet not reaching the pedals, her hands trembling slightly above the keys. "Go ahead," the tutor said softly. "Play whatever you wish." For a moment, there was silence. The girl took a deep breath. Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she watched her daughter close her eyes and place her fingers on the keys. The first few notes were soft, almost uncertain, but then something changed. Her hands began to move with confidence, not from training, but from pure instinct. The melody flowed effortlessly, smooth and emotional, the kind that pulls on something deep inside anyone listening. The laughter that once filled that room was gone. The guests looked at each other speechless. Even the mistress of the house, who had expected nothing but noise, found herself frozen. The tutor's mouth hung open slightly. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Each note was alive and full of feeling, full of truth. The girl wasn't just playing. She was telling a story through sound, one that no one could interrupt or laugh at. When the last note faded, the room stayed silent. Then slowly the tutor clapped. The sound startled everyone, and soon others joined in. The maid covered her mouth with her hands, unable to hold back her tears. Her daughter looked around, unsure what she had done wrong or right. The tutor walked over to her, kneeling beside the piano. "Who taught you to play like that?" he asked gently. The girl looked at him and said, "No one. I just listen." He studied her for a long moment. "You have a gift," he said finally. "A rare one." She smiled shyly, not fully understanding what he meant. The mistress of the house forced a polite smile and said, "Well, that was surprising," but her tone carried discomfort. The thought of a maid's daughter being praised in her living room didn't sit well with her. After that day, everything changed again, but in a different way. The tutor began visiting more often, asking permission to teach the girl properly. He told the mistress, "She could be great one day if she gets the right training." The mistress hesitated. Not wanting her home turned into a place for charity, but her husband, moved by what he saw, agreed. "Let the child learn," he said. "It cost us nothing to give her a chance." The girl began taking lessons quietly in the evenings after the family's children were done. The tutor guided her gently, showing her the right way to read notes, to hold her hands, to move with rhythm. But what amazed him most was that she already understood the language of music. She didn't just play notes, she played emotions. When he played a piece once, she could repeat it almost exactly, as if she'd known it forever. Her mother watched from the hallway sometimes, her eyes full of pride and disbelief. Each note that came from the piano sounded like a small miracle to her. But she also noticed the way some of the other servants whispered, the way the mistress frowned whenever the girl's name was mentioned. Not everyone was happy to see her daughter shine. Some thought it was wrong, unnatural, that someone from their position could ever rise so high. One evening, as the girl finished her practice, the mistress walked in. Her expression was cold but polite. "You play well," she said, "but remember where you come from. Don't forget that." The girl nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't say anything else. She just went back to polishing the piano keys before leaving the room. That night, her mother asked what had happened. The girl didn't tell her everything. She just said, "She told me not to forget who I am." Her mother held her close and whispered, "Who you are is more than where you were born." The next morning, the tutor came with a surprise, an invitation to a small local recital. He wanted her to play there among other young students. "It's just for fun," he said. "No pressure." The maid's eyes widened. "But sir, she can't go there. People will talk." The tutor smiled kindly. "Let them talk. Let them hear her. That's what music is for, to be heard." The girl didn't say much. She just looked at her mother for approval. Her mother hesitated but finally nodded. "If this is what you love, go and show them." The girl hugged her mother tightly, her heart beating fast with both fear and excitement. That night she practiced longer than ever before. Every note felt like a promise. Every sound a step closer to something she couldn't yet name. She didn't know what would happen next, but she could feel that her world, the quiet, hidden one she'd always known, was about to grow bigger. And though she was still the maid's daughter, she was no longer invisible. The same hands that once scrubbed floors now made music that silenced even the proudest hearts. She didn't know it yet, but that performance, the one meant just for fun, would soon change everything again. The day of the small recital arrived, and the maid's daughter was nervous in a way she had never been before. She had practiced quietly every evening for weeks, learning new pieces under the tutor's patient guidance. Still, nothing could prepare her for the bright lights, the polished stage, and the sea of faces waiting to hear her play. She held her mother's hand tightly as they walked into the hall. Her mother's eyes were full of both pride and worry, silently reminding her to be careful, to stay humble, to survive in a world that had already mocked her once. The room was filled with children from other homes, all dressed in neat clothes and polished shoes. Some of them looked at her with curiosity, some with judgment. She was the only one in simple, worn clothes, and she felt the weight of it on her small shoulders. Her mother whispered, "It's okay, my child. Just play as you always do. Close your eyes if it helps." She nodded, her heart racing. She wanted nothing more than to let the music flow, but fear crept in like a shadow at the edge of her mind. When it was her turn, she stepped onto the stage slowly. The polished floor reflected her tiny shoes, and she felt as if everyone could see her every movement. She sat on the piano bench, her small legs dangling. The keys looked larger than ever. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers gently on the keys. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost shy, as if she were testing the air. Then, like a gentle wind spreading through the hall, the melody grew, filling every corner with sound. The music wasn't just notes. It was a story, full of emotion with highs and lows that made the listeners lean forward in their seats. The tutor, standing to the side, couldn't hide his amazement. The other children's mouths fell open. The people who had judged her before could only sit and listen, unable to look away. She played without thinking about who was watching or what they thought. Her hands moved naturally, guided by something deep inside her. Every chord, every pause carried feelings she didn't have words for. She remembered the nights in the storeroom, the hours she had spent playing when no one was around, and it all came together in this moment. The girl who had once been invisible, who had been laughed at and mocked, now held the entire room in her hands. When the last note faded, the hall was quiet for a moment, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then the applause began. At first it was soft, hesitant, as if people weren't sure whether they should clap for someone like her. But then it grew louder and louder, filling the room with sound. People stood on their feet, clapping and cheering. The tutor's eyes glistened with tears. The other children clapped too, some of them looking embarrassed for having doubted her. Backstage, her mother held her tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You did it just like I knew you could." The girl smiled, her small chest rising and falling with excitement. For the first time, she felt proud of herself, not for anyone else, but simply because she had shared something she loved. After the applause, the tutor knelt beside her. "You have something very rare," he said softly. "A talent like yours doesn't come often. But more than that, you have heart. Remember, heart is what makes music alive." She looked up at him, unsure what to say. All she knew was that she wanted to keep playing, to keep sharing her music no matter what anyone thought. As they left the hall, the maid could see the whispers and glances from the other parents. Some were impressed, others confused. How could someone from such a humble background play like that? The girl didn't care. She was walking with her head held a little higher, feeling the warmth of the music still lingering in her chest. The next week, the tutor visited the house again. He had been speaking to a few people who ran a small music academy in the city. "I want to train her properly," he told the maid. "She has potential to go far, much farther than she could ever imagine here." Her mother hesitated. "But she's just a child, and our life." She trailed off. The tutor smiled gently. "Life is exactly why she must be trained. She has a gift that could change everything, not only for her, but for you too." The maid's daughter began spending more time with the tutor, learning the basics she had never been taught before: how to read music properly, how to position her fingers, and how to understand rhythms in a deeper way. It wasn't always easy. Some days she grew frustrated when a piece didn't sound right or when her fingers stumbled. But the tutor never scolded her. "Mistakes are part of learning," he said. "Every great musician has made thousands before reaching perfection." Her mother watched quietly from a corner during these lessons, her heart swelling with pride. She had worried so much about the world seeing her daughter, about her being mocked again, but now she realized that the world had already seen her. And instead of hurting her, it had started to open doors. One afternoon, while practicing a difficult new piece, her fingers slipped. She groaned, frustrated, but the tutor smiled and said, "Do it again slowly. Feel each note. Music isn't a race. It's a story." She tried again, slower this time, and the melody started to make sense. She realized that the music was teaching her patience, teaching her something even more important than skill: confidence. The children of the house, who had once laughed at her, began to notice the change. Some watched her from a distance, whispering. One of them finally approached. You play really well," he said quietly. She didn't respond immediately. She had learned not to expect kindness from those who had mocked her before. But after a moment she smiled softly and said, "Thank you." That simple word surprised him. No anger, no shame, just gratitude. Word of her talent began to spread quietly among a few families in the city. The tutor encouraged her to perform for small gatherings, local recitals where people could see her skill and hear her heart. Each time she grew a little braver, her confidence building. She began to realize that music could change people's minds before words ever could. One evening, after a long day of practice, her mother sat beside her. "You know," she said softly, "I never imagined you would go this far." The girl looked up, her eyes shining. "I just wanted to play, Mama. I didn't want to prove anything to them." Her mother smiled and held her hand. Sometimes the world notices anyway, and when it does, it changes. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. The maid's daughter understood in her heart that music wasn't just about playing notes correctly. It was about telling a story, sharing something pure and honest. She thought about all the times she had been laughed at, all the moments she had felt invisible, and she realized that her music had carried her through those moments. The piano had become more than an instrument. It had become a voice, a way to speak when words weren't enough. The tutor noticed it too. One day he asked her to play a piece he had never taught her before. She had to listen carefully, understand the melody, and then reproduce it. She hesitated, but as soon as her fingers touched the keys, the music flowed out naturally. The tutor's eyes widened. "You can hear and play it perfectly after just one listen?" he asked. She nodded. "I hear it in my head and then my fingers remember." This was when the tutor realized that her gift was extraordinary. She didn't just have talent. She had perfect pitch and a natural ability to interpret music emotionally. It was something very few people were born with. He made a promise to himself that he would not let her talent go unnoticed. that he would help her reach heights she hadn't even dreamed of. Meanwhile, the maid worried. People in the house began to talk. Some servants were jealous, others curious. The mistress, though she could not deny the girl's skill, still seemed uneasy whenever her daughter's name was mentioned. But the girl didn't care. She had learned to focus on the music, on the joy it brought her rather than the whispers around her. She had discovered something no one could take away, a gift that was hers and hers alone. Days turned into weeks, and each performance, each lesson, each practice session made her stronger. She began to understand her own power, not in terms of wealth or status, but in the beauty she could create and share. The little girl who had once been laughed at for touching a piano now played with confidence, her music speaking for her when no one else could. And though she was still the maid's daughter in the eyes of the world, she had begun to see herself differently. She was not invisible anymore. She had a voice. She had music. And the world, slowly but surely, was beginning to listen. The little girl's talent had grown beyond the old storeroom piano, beyond the quiet corners of the house, and into something real and powerful. Her tutor, impressed and determined, had begun giving her proper lessons, teaching her not just to play but to understand music in a deeper way. He showed her how to read sheet music, how to control her fingers and hands, and how to feel the music, not just play it. The girl absorbed everything like a sponge, her young mind and heart open to every note, every lesson, every word of encouragement. Her mother watched quietly from the corner of the room during lessons, sometimes holding back tears. She couldn't believe what was happening. The same child who had once been laughed at by the children of the house was now playing with the skill and emotion of someone far older. Each note was a small miracle, a proof that the world could sometimes be fair, even if only for a moment. Despite her talent, the world around her remained complicated. The mistress of the house watched with thinly veiled discomfort whenever the girl practiced. She could not deny her skill, yet she still struggled to accept that someone from such humble beginnings could surpass her own children. Some of the other servants whispered, some were curious, and others were jealous, but the girl learned to focus only on the music. It had become her world, a place where judgment could not follow her. One day her tutor arrived with a letter. It was an invitation to perform at a small city recital, a chance for her to showcase her growing talent to an audience outside the household. The girl's eyes widened with excitement but also fear. She had never performed in front of people who weren't family or familiar faces. Her mother hesitated as well. "Are you sure?" she asked. "People will look and they will judge." The girl nodded, her fingers tapping softly against her lap. "I want to do it, Mama. I want them to hear me, not just see me." Her mother sighed and held her hand. "Then I will be with you," she said. "No matter what happens, I will be there." On the day of the recital, the girl wore a simple dress, clean and neat, but far less fancy than the other children. She could feel their eyes on her as she entered the room. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with doubt, and some with quiet disapproval. She felt a familiar pang of fear, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of all the practice, all the hours spent perfecting her skill. She remembered her mother's words. "You play for the music, not for them." When it was her turn to perform, she walked to the piano and sat down. The bright stage lights made her heart race. She closed her eyes and let her fingers hover above the keys. Then she began to play. The music poured out like water, gentle at first, then rising with emotion and power. She played not to impress, not to prove, but because she had to, because the music lived inside her. The audience fell silent. The tutor, sitting at the side, could barely contain his pride. Every note was perfect, every pause intentional, every emotion clear. The girl was no longer just a child playing a piano. She was a storyteller, sharing a piece of her soul with everyone in the room. Some listeners leaned forward, captivated. Others were moved to tears. The children who had once laughed at her could not stop watching. They saw for the first time the power and beauty of her talent. After the last note faded, the room was quiet for a moment. Then applause erupted, stronger than she had ever imagined. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. The girl's small chest rose and fell rapidly. She looked at her mother, who sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. She smiled, feeling proud and shy all at once. She had done it. She had shared her gift, and it had been seen and heard. After the recital, the tutor approached her with a serious expression. "You are ready for more," he said. "There are schools, competitions, and opportunities. If you continue to work hard, you could achieve things beyond what you ever imagined. The girl's eyes widened. Do you really think so? She asked softly. He nodded. Yes, you have more than talent. You have heart, determination, and courage. Those are the things that will take you far. Her mother, listening to the conversation, felt a mixture of pride and fear. She had always wanted her daughter to be happy and safe, but now she realized the path ahead would not be easy. The world was full of people who might not understand, who might try to stop her. Yet she could see that her daughter was ready to face it, ready to show her gift no matter what obstacles came in the way. In the weeks that followed, the girl continued her lessons with even more dedication. She spent hours practicing, learning new techniques and exploring the depth of the music she loved. The tutor introduced her to more complex pieces that challenged her both technically and emotionally. Sometimes she would make mistakes, sometimes her fingers would stumble, but she never gave up. She learned that mastery required patience, persistence, and resilience. The family's children, who had once mocked her, began to change their attitude slightly. Some of them still struggled with jealousy, but others began to approach her quietly, asking questions about her music, curious to learn. They couldn't deny her skill anymore, and the tutor reminded her to treat them with kindness, to rise above their past behavior. The girl learned that strength was not just in talent but in grace and humility as well. One afternoon, as she practiced a particularly difficult piece, her mother came into the room and sat quietly, watching. She noticed how focused and determined her daughter had become. You are learning so much, she said softly. The girl smiled, wiping sweat from her forehead. I want to be the best I can, Mama. I want to make the music feel alive. Her mother nodded, feeling both proud and emotional. She remembered the days when her daughter had only touched the piano secretly, when laughter had made her hide. Now she had grown into someone brave enough to share her talent with the world. The tutor also began preparing her for more public performances. He wanted her to experience the world outside the house, to show her talent in different settings. Each performance built her confidence. She began to understand that music was more than just sound. It was connection. Through her playing, she could reach people's hearts in ways that words could not. At home, life began to change too. The mistress of the house could no longer ignore the girl's skill. She still struggled with the idea of a maid's daughter achieving recognition, but she began to respect her quietly. The tutor reminded the girl that not everyone would accept her, and that was okay. Focus on those who hear you with open hearts, he advised. The girl learned to do just that, finding joy in her music, in her growth, and in the small victories that came each day. Her mother continued to support her quietly, ensuring she stayed grounded and safe. She encouraged her daughter to practice not only for the applause or recognition, but for the love of the music itself. She reminded her that talent was a gift, but humility and kindness were what made it meaningful. The girl took these lessons to heart, balancing her growing skill with a gentle and caring nature. One evening, after a long day of lessons, the tutor asked her to play something new, something she had never tried before. The girl hesitated but then allowed herself to be guided. As she played, the music flowed naturally, full of emotion and depth. The tutor smiled. You have something rare. You understand music, not just as sound, but as expression. That is what makes a true artist, the girl's eyes shone. She felt proud not just of her skill, but of the way her music could touch people. The world outside the house began to notice her talent quietly. Small invitations arrived, letters from music schools, and suggestions for competitions. Her mother worried about each new opportunity, concerned for her daughter's safety and well-being. But she also knew that these chances could change her life. The girl, however, was fearless in her love for music. She saw each challenge as a way to grow, to become stronger, to share her gift with more people. The maid's daughter had learned many things by this point. She had learned patience, perseverance, and focus. She had learned to rise above mockery and judgment. She had learned to value kindness and humility alongside skill. Most importantly, she had learned that her music was a voice that could speak to anyone, regardless of their background, status, or opinion. And while she was still the maid's daughter in the eyes of the world, she had begun to realize that her identity was not defined by her station or her clothes. It was defined by her talent, her heart, and the way she used both to touch the world around her. Each note she played was a step toward something bigger, something she could not yet fully see but could feel deep inside her soul. The tutor, her mother, and even some of the people who had once doubted her began to understand that she was extraordinary, not just because of her skill, but because of the courage, discipline, and love she poured into every piece she played. She had become someone who could inspire, who could change hearts, and who could show that greatness could come from anywhere, even the quiet hidden corners of the world. And so, the girl continued to practice, to perform, and to grow. She learned that music was more than a series of notes. It was life itself, full of emotion, struggle, joy, and hope. Every key she pressed was a statement of who she was, and every melody she played was proof that dreams, no matter how humble their beginnings, could become reality. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face it with her heart open and her music flowing. And for the first time in her young life, she felt that the world might finally be ready to listen. The day had finally come for the biggest performance of her life so far. Her tutor had arranged for her to play at a prestigious city recital, a place where many talented musicians had performed, and where influential people in the music world would be watching. The little girl, who had once been laughed at for touching a piano, now walked through the halls of the concert venue with a mixture of fear and excitement. Her mother held her hand tightly, offering comfort and encouragement. "Remember, my child," she whispered, "play for yourself, play for the music. Everything else will follow." The backstage area was buzzing with performers, parents, and teachers. The girl felt small and out of place among the elegantly dressed children and nervous parents. She clutched her dress and looked at her reflection in the polished wall, barely recognizing the confident young girl staring back at her. She had come a long way from the dusty corners of the storeroom piano. Her fingers, once trembling with uncertainty, now moved with control and purpose. But her heart still raced as she realized the audience waiting outside. When her turn came, she stepped onto the stage. The bright lights made the polished floor shine, and she could see rows of chairs filled with people all looking at her. The room was quiet, almost reverent. The tutor gave her a gentle nod from the side, and she took a deep breath. She could feel her mother's presence in the front row, steady and supportive, reminding her that she was not alone. She sat on the piano bench, her small hands resting above the keys. For a moment she paused. She remembered all the times she had played in secret, all the nights she had practiced when no one was watching, and all the laughter that had once tried to stop her. She remembered the tutor's words, her mother's love, and the way music had always made her feel alive. Slowly, she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, almost hesitant, as if she were feeling her way into the room. Then the music grew, flowing through the hall with clarity, emotion, and strength. Each note carried a story, a piece of her journey from being ignored and laughed at to standing here, sharing her heart with the world. The audience was captivated. Some leaned forward, unable to look away. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The girl had become more than a performer. She had become a storyteller, her music speaking in ways words never could. She played a piece full of contrasts, soft and tender in some moments, strong and commanding in others. She thought about the nights she had spent in the storeroom, the secret practice, the laughter she had endured, and the patience her mother had shown. Every note she pressed was a tribute to those experiences, a testament to the love, determination, and courage that had brought her here. She had learned that music was more than skill. It was feeling, emotion, and truth. As the final notes faded, the audience remained silent for a heartbeat. Then the applause erupted, louder than anything she had ever heard. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping. Tears ran down her mother's face as she watched her daughter, her pride overwhelming her. The little girl, once invisible in a grand house, now felt the full power of being seen, being heard, and being appreciated. After the performance, the tutor approached her, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it," he said softly. "You have taken something beautiful and made it extraordinary. This is only the beginning." The girl nodded, still catching her breath, still overwhelmed by the experience. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, perseverance, and heart were just as important. People came up to her after the performance, offering compliments, praise, and encouragement. Some were curious about her background, amazed to learn that she had grown up as a maid's daughter. Others asked if she would continue her studies, if she would perform again. She answered shyly, thanking them, feeling proud but humble. She had learned that kindness and humility could make her shine even brighter than skill alone. Her mother hugged her tightly afterward. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "You have shown the world who you are." The girl hugged her mother back, feeling the warmth and love that had guided her from the beginning. She realized that this journey was not just about music. It was about family, love, courage, and the belief that no matter where you start, you could rise above. The recital opened doors she had never imagined. Invitations to music schools, competitions, and workshops began to arrive. Her tutor guided her through each opportunity carefully, making sure she was ready and supported. The little girl learned to balance her growing responsibilities with her studies, her practice, and her life at home. She discovered that the world could be both challenging and rewarding, and that perseverance was the key to navigating it. Even back at the house, life had changed. The mistress who had once looked upon her with skepticism now watched quietly with respect. The children who had mocked her began to approach her with curiosity, and some even sought advice on music. The girl treated them with kindness, never boasting, never letting their past behavior affect her. She had learned that true strength was not only in talent but in character. One day, the tutor brought news of a special opportunity, a scholarship to a prestigious music academy in the city. The girl's eyes widened and her mother gasped. It was more than they had ever dared to hope for. The tutor explained that this was a chance to train with the best teachers, to perform on bigger stages, and to meet musicians from all over. It was an opportunity that could change her life forever. Her mother's heart raced with excitement and fear. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "It will be hard. You will be far from home." The girl nodded, her determination shining. "I want to go, Mama. I want to keep learning, keep playing, and see how far I can go." Her mother smiled through her tears. "Then we will do it together," she said. "I will be here every step of the way cheering for you." The academy welcomed her with open arms. Her talent, her dedication, and her story had already reached their ears. The first day was overwhelming. The building was huge, the other students were skilled and confident, and the teachers expected a lot. But the girl remembered all she had learned, to focus, to listen, to practice patiently, and to let her heart guide her fingers. She stepped into each lesson with courage, ready to absorb everything, ready to grow even further. Over time, she became known not only for her extraordinary skill, but also for her kindness and humility. She helped other students, encouraged those struggling, and shared her experiences with those who doubted themselves. Her journey from being laughed at as a maid's daughter to becoming a respected young pianist inspired everyone around her. People saw that talent and heart could overcome obstacles, that dreams could rise from even the humblest beginnings. Years passed, and the girl continued to perform, study, and grow. She entered competitions, played in recitals, and gradually earned recognition as a young virtuoso. Each performance reminded her of where she had come from: the quiet storeroom, the laughter of children, the loving support of her mother, and the unwavering guidance of her tutor. Every note she played carried those memories, those experiences, and that love. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, she returned home to see her mother waiting. They sat together quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. "Do you remember when you first touched the piano?" her mother asked softly. The girl smiled. "I remember. I just wanted to play for you." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "And look at you now," she whispered. "You have touched the hearts of so many people. You have shown them who you are." The little girl, now a young woman, understood something important. Talent could open doors, but it was love, courage, and perseverance that allowed her to walk through them. She realized that her journey was about more than music. It was about hope, resilience, and the power of following your heart, no matter where you start. Her story became known not just in her city but beyond, inspiring children, parents, and musicians alike. People admired her skill, yes, but more than that, they admired her spirit, the way she had risen above ridicule, embraced her gift, and shared it with the world. She had become a living proof that true talent is found in the heart, not in wealth or status. And through it all, her mother remained her constant support, proud and loving, always reminding her of the girl she had been and the woman she had become. The maid's daughter, once laughed at, invisible and underestimated, had grown into a virtuoso, a young artist whose music carried stories, emotions and dreams touching everyone who listened. As she played on bigger stages, under brighter lights, she never forgot the first time she had asked, softly and timidly, "Can I play it for my mom?" That innocent question, born from love and curiosity, had set her on a path that changed her life forever. It reminded her that even the smallest voice, even the quietest heart, could create something extraordinary when nurtured with love, courage, and dedication. And so the music continued, filling halls, hearts, and lives, a testament to the power of talent, perseverance, and a mother's unwavering belief in her child. The girl who had once been mocked had become a woman who could inspire the world, one note at a time. Her story and her music would never be forgotten.